Alright. Enough games. What is going on with March 7th? We show up to Amphoreus, and all of a sudden she's sick and reverting back to her crystal state, the same way we found her, floating in a giant crystal with no memories of her past. But why? What is her connection to Amphoreus, the Remembrance, or the Titans? Is this her home world? And if it is, why is she reacting this way? Can you believe I'm naive enough to think that we'd get at least a little bit of information on March 7th? But no, we're left with even more questions than we had going in, but that's okay, because it leaves for quite a few interesting theories. Something I thought was very interesting, and I didn't even catch this when I first played through, but somebody brought it up in the comments on my last video. The Titan of Time, when we seek their help, only starts referring to us as Mother, as soon as we pull March 7th's camera out to take a picture. That is incredibly interesting. For so many reasons I can't even explain them all. We don't even know what the Titans are. Are they emanators? Are they eons? Are they simply something we just haven't experienced before? Because according to Black Swan, they're not exactly any of those things. But they obviously have tremendous power over different concepts like time, ocean, sky, law, death, strife. And at the time, I thought they were talking about the Trailblazer as Mother. But looking back at it now, I guess if they were referring to us as Mother, they would have done it already throughout the trial to get to that point. And the Titan of Time was talking and Castorius was interpreting it for us the whole time. So why was it only when we pulled out the camera? And if it's referring to March 7th, what does that mean? Now we're going to explore a few different theories in this video, but the reason why I think she's reverting back to her crystallized state, obviously Amphoreus is probably in a giant time loop. We're going to explore a lot of that in this video, but I think her being encased in crystal has something to do with protecting her from that time loop shenanigans, because Amphoreus is a giant infinity sign. But let's start with the first theory in this video, and one of the longest running theories on this channel, in regards to March 7th. In short, Memo Keepers abandon their mortal bodies and collect memories for the Remembrance. Why would Memo Keepers do this if the Aeon itself didn't do this already? A giant humanoid crystal figure is the Aeon of Remembrance fully, but wouldn't this Aeon have abandoned its body too, encased in a layer of crystal? An empty husk of what it once was. I don't think the Aeon would abandon its mortal body and just discard it. Preserving it makes the most sense, just like the memories they store. So in a way, March 7th's old consciousness and who she used to be would ascend into Aeonhood, and March 7th herself, the body left over, would more or less be a clean-slated new person altogether. And maybe this is the result of March 7th being in close proximity of her old self, the Aeon version of herself, hence her resorting back to her crystal state. Maybe this is just what happens when her old body comes in contact with her old essence, the Aeon. There's a lot of little details. I already made a video all about it if you want to explore that avenue, but it could explain the whole Mother, if this Aeon is responsible for the creation of the Titans. And if March 7th ascended into Aeonhood to become fully, they would recognize her camera and who she used to be. It seems pretty obvious as well that this little creature, Mem, think I'm saying that right? Kind of resembles March 7th. Perhaps March 7th's body, memories, and spirit were all split for a specific reason, and maybe that reason has to do with the conflict and the issues going on in Amphoreus with the three Aeons. Obviously, unlike anywhere we've been before, Amphoreus isn't a physical planet we go to. It's an infinity symbol. And I have no doubt in my mind, again, we've talked about this a lot too, inspired from the 13 Flame Chasers of Honkai Impact, whose story is told through assimilation. A memory, if you will. Amphoreus could be just a giant time-looped memory story playing out. Humanity versus the gods, the Titans. An epic story of its Flame Chasers, how they become demigods. And the story just repeats in a time loop. Amphoreus literally being a place trapped in a specific turn of events, in a never-ending cycle, a never-ending time loop in memory, inspired from the Elysian realm. But was this the Remembrance's doing, and in turn, March 7th? It's hard to say for sure, but it's definitely a possibility. Either that, or I'm leaning towards March 7th being a very powerful emanator of the remembrance, but something happened to her, and she forgot everything about herself. We know that two Aeons are remembrance and erudition. I've also talked a lot before that I think Mythos might be playing a part since it's a counterpart to erudition and actually spawned from the remembrance. Mythos shrouding this place in mystery makes a lot of sense too if it's an undiscovered world with secrets that people want to keep hidden. Just like how the humans on this world have no idea that there's other civilizations and worlds out there. They call it the Sky People. They don't even know about the Aeons. But I also think the finality has something to do with Amphoreus. The whole concept of playing in the game, reversing time, jumping back between the present and the past, but also able to change events that happened in the past and actually live through it. And then there's the variant of Kevin Kazlana, Finon, who is very clearly being presented to us as this very likable hero. They already sort of teased that at the end of the quest. His story is shaping up to be a lot like his variant counterpart of Kevin, an unsung hero of an era, fighting against the Honkai, the survival of humanity, fighting to the very last man, with nothing but tragedy befalling him, and he would ultimately become the villain, the herrscher of finality. Maybe what we're witnessing is the birth of that Aeon, where it came from, maybe even the concept of Aeons. Regardless, this story is trapped in a time loop, a memory, a simulation that tells us something incredibly important about the whole Honkai Star Rail universe, something that nobody must learn, which is why this place is so incredibly hidden. Nobody from the outside can access it, and nobody from within can get out. It's hush-hush for a reason, which also explains why March 7th had her memories nuked. So that's one possible theory as to who March 7th is. But there's something else. At the very end of the quest, we got two little Easter eggs. One, at the very end, was March 7th being recased in ice due to her affliction of being close proximity of this world, clearly. But we also get a younger version of Finon talking to Who, his childhood friend. If you're familiar with the Flame Chasers, you know of a Flame Chaser that's very significant. Alicia, a pink-haired character that wields a bow and ice powers. And who was she? Oh yeah, the herrscher of Origin. And what do they call her? Mother? The Titan even sang, "Is that you, Mother? Mother encountered you. She misses you. Follow me, please follow me, I see you. She also misses you. We want to see everything about you." And we immediately gain the gaze of Fully and encounter this creature that gives us the power of remembrance. Alicia was the co-leader of the 13 Flame Chasers along with Kevin, so she ranked second. And clearly, this little cutscene is a younger version of these two as variants, the Honkai Star Rail version. And in all instances where we have seen this pink-haired girl, that is very likely the counterpart to Alicia. We don't get to see all of her eyes, just a little bit, because I think if we did, it might reveal that maybe this is March 7th. But something happened, where they had to take her and remove her from this story, this memory, this time loop. The world that is or was Amphoreus had to remove her from the equation, so they encased her in ice and took away her past and memories. But now that she's in close proximity, something is happening. Maybe March 7th being reintroduced to Amphoreus can cause the time loop to break, the memory, and then something bad happened. Perhaps this version of Kevin, Finon, collects all the Titan cores and becomes an Aeon himself, or maybe something much worse. There's a lot of concepts of finality, the end times, the black tide in the abyss that looks a lot like the abyss from Genshin Impact, come to consume everything. Humans versus the gods, the inevitable demise, and humans fight against it. Would this version of Kevin go to such great lengths to save humanity in his world that he could become the villain that he's trying to defeat? Definitely. This is only reinforced by Mighty, who is worried about Finon going to collect the core. This story quest really tried to make Finon a really likable, relatable hero type, but there's more to him. He's driven by revenge. He has guilt that he might not live up to the expectations. something is going to go terribly wrong with him. I have no doubt in my mind. I don't think this version of Kevin is going to be a one-for-one copy of Honkai Impact's with the exact same story. I just think it would be an interesting dynamic though, if March 7th was his version of Alicia, but something happened causing her to be removed from Amphoreus. And it would seem that the higher powers here are really trying to prevent whatever's going to happen, which is why I believe that Mythos could be the third Aeon in this equation, but also the finality could play a part. And March 7th being Honkai Star Rail's Alicia, the Hairster of Origin, goes along with Kevin's Hairster of Finality, the number 1 and 2 Flame Chasers. But in this game, in this version of the Flame Chasers, they were split up. Maybe March 7th's departure from Amphoreus is how the Garden of Recollection even caught a glimpse of it and was able to catch on in the first place, like Black Swan tells us. Alicia was the caretaker of the Elysian Realm. The Elysian Realm simulated versions of the Flame Chasers and their epic story from over 10,000 years ago in an old era. Yeah, that's how long Kevin and maybe now Finan have been fighting fate, the Abyss, the Black Tide, the Honkai, whatever, fighting for humanity's survival. But Alicia was the caretaker of that simulation and their story in current era. Amphoreus is a giant infinity sign, a time loop, a memory, a tale, trapped in an endless cycle. Maybe March 7th is something similar. In the Elysian Realm 2 and Honkai Impact, it's under attack. This could be something very similar. I think March 7th's association with this world is what allows the Titans to look at us from a second view. Why we were able to gain the Remembrance's power in the first place. Why we're able to do time manipulation, thanks to the Titan of Time. And the Trailblazer knowing March 7th and having her camera has allowed us to impact Amphoreus in a unique way. March 7th's picture going around now. A Titan recognizing her camera. March turning back into crystal form. I have no doubt in my mind that our association with March 7th is what allows us to use Titan powers of time, and allowed us to gain Fully's gaze of remembrance and using that power, now having a companion of remembrance by our side. Regardless, we have only scratched the surface of Amphoreus. This place is crazy. They really tried to present us with a cookie cutter, good versus evil, humans versus gods, straightforward story. And in the background, so many things happening. If you recall the Elysian Realm, the simulation and story of the Flame Chasers was attacked by the Hairster of Corruption. The simulation was attacked by a Hairster that was basically like a virus. Maybe the Black Tide in Amphoreus is the same counterpart to this infinity, time-looped memory and tale. You gotta admit, there's a lot of corresponding similarities. Something we have to consider too is we're presented with the idea that 3 Aeons are fighting over Amphoreus. And the third Aeon being Mythos, and us not knowing it's Mythos, is the most Mythos thing ever. Being uncertain of the third Aeon is a very enigmatic character trait. That's part of the Aeon's whole shtick, right? But do we know for sure that these Aeons are working against each other, or maybe they're working together? Throughout Honkai Star Rail history, if you look at Enna of Order teaming up with Preservation to deal with the Swarm disaster and other Aeons joining the fight, because Tazeranth of Propagation was a problem. It unbalanced the universe. I think the finality is probably the most dangerous of Aeons. And if you were gonna have 3 Aeons working together to contain the finality, maybe even try to prevent its birth or ascension by trapping its origin in a time loop, endlessly. If Finan and the Titans have something to do with the birth of the finality, the concept of it, then this infinity, time loop memory, whatever is taking place here, might be the only way to contain this Aeon's ascension, or contain it in some capacity. Even if it's not the Aeon of finality, the idea that these 3 Aeons are collaborating to contain whatever happens with this story, Finan, the Titans, and whatever March 7th is and contributes to this, kinda makes sense. Because if you recall, Alicia from Honkai Impact 3rd died. Yes, there was a simulation version of her in the Elysian Realm later on, but her real life version did perish. in the old era of Honkai Impact. But in this version, it would be very interesting if March 7th was her counterpart, but instead of perishing, she was removed and encased in ice, but stripped of her memories, for her own survival perhaps. That's what I mean, there's so many possible different outcomes and theories here. Was March 7th removed and was necessary, or do they need her to actually return to Amphoreus? Is her removal from Amphoreus sinister, and what's causing this planet to have problems? And is the root cause of the problem, or is her arrival going to be the problem? That is what's so incredibly interesting here, because she obviously has some incredible significance to this story. And not knowing too much about the three Aeons and their motives with Amphoreus, if they're working together or not, the Titans, their origin and creation, makes it so much harder to pinpoint March 7th in this equation. But we're not done, we have one more theory. Also, I have seen a lot too that people believe that March 7th is actually the Aeon of Beauty, Adrilla, and that might actually be the third Aeon in this equation, and that Adrilla was sealed away because remembrance and beauty were starting to overlap with their paths, kind of like harmony and order. Only remembrance didn't want to absorb it, or eradicate the Aeon, which actually makes sense because remembrance wants to record everything, in case the inevitable demise of the universe. Which again, just makes sense why finality plays a part here, because the finality is actually what the remembrance is trying to save memories when that happens. But if remembrance was going to absorb beauty, encasing it in ice or condensed crystal makes a ton of sense to preserve it, like all the memories. And condensed crystal is something very much associated with the remembrance. There's also that dude that tricked us into taking a picture and looked at all of March 7th's photos, looked at all of her selfies, and started spreading it around in Amphoreus' internet, and the people started calling her Rosy Celestial Maiden, something the Aeon of Beauty is associated with, roses. That's just another possibility though, since that Aeon is very vague and we don't actually know what happened to it. Is it dead? It can take the shape of whatever anyone finds the most beautiful. But if it was given the form of March 7th, and then got its memories wiped, maybe it's stuck in this form for now. This approach in theory isn't my favorite and not one I'm certainly leaning on, but honestly, anything's on the table. Those are some different theories and ideas about March 7th, her possible connections with the Remembrance, Amphoreus, and whatever the hell's going on here. I thought we would get some questions answered. I didn't think they're gonna outright tell us right away, of course not, but I didn't think they'd leave us with more questions rather than having some answers. But it's always interesting to talk about. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. What do you think's going on with March 7th? Do you think she's the Aeon fully? An emanator of that path? A different Aeon or emanator of some sort? Do you think she's one of the Flame Chasers? The creator of the Titans, but was removed and her memories wiped out? I am very curious to see what you guys have to say. But thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Like and subscribe if you'd like to see more content like this, and as always, we will see you all in the next one. Later.